narrative I keep hearing lately. AI is coming for law firms. In-house teams are replacing outside counsel, and everything is moving in-house. And honestly, I think that's wrong. Or at least I think it is asking the wrong question. Because what I'm seeing isn't that law firms losing power. They're losing the first move. And those are not the same thing. That distinction has been on my mind now for a while because I keep hearing this conversation framed almost like winner take all game. In-house wins, law firm lose, AI replaces lawyers, and real life is rarely that simple. What is interesting is that the biggest shift I am seeing isn't really about substitution. It is about sequencing. For decades, the first move in litigation belonged to outside counsel. Something happened. The client called the firm. The firm framed the issues. The firm drafted the first documents. The firm established the strategy. And then everybody else sort of reacted. That was the sequence for a very, very long time. And when you own the sequence, yes, you own a lot of leverage. But I keep seeing something different now. In-house teams are showing up prepared. They're building frameworks. They are developing playbooks all around, not just in litigation and not just in contracts. They are defining escalation paths. They are standardizing approaches. They're making the first move themselves. Not because they want to replace firms, because they want to arrive organized. And honestly, once you see it, you can't really unsee it. Because if a law firm enters after the framework already exists, they're not powerless. They're operating inside a very different system. The questions are narrower. The assumptions are already established. The scope is better defined. And that's not necessarily bad, but it is absolutely different. One of the things that strikes me is that people often confuse authorship with influence. For a long time, drafting everything was viewed as influence. But is it? Is it true today? I don't think so. Influence isn't about touching every document. Influence is about shaping the decisions that matter. And sometimes those are different things. I think they're especially different in the age of AI. What's interesting is that the research I published recently at Stanford Codex has been describing something similar using the phrase command center. I love that image because increasingly I think in-house teams are becoming command centers. Not because they're doing everything. That's not it. Nobody has time for that. And definitely not in-house. They are coordinating. They are deciding. They are orchestrating. They're saying, here's the framework, here's the risk tolerance, here's the escalation, and here's when we need your expertise. And then outside counsel comes in where they are the strongest. They are actually a healthier model. And I think AI is very much accelerating this. Not because AI replaces law firms, that's not it. Because AI lowers the cost of getting to a usable first draft. And first drafts are very interesting. People obsess over perfection. I don't think that's what matters. Direction matters. The first move matters. Once direction is established, leverage shifts. I see this in discovery all the time. Historically, firms often draw the process. Now, in-house teams are increasingly arriving with preservation protocols, ESI frameworks, proportionality positions, and very, very clear objectives. And it makes sense. They know their business. They know the facts of the case. And yes, they absolutely know their tolerance. The law firms aren't being excluded. That is not what happens. They are being asked to refine, pressure test, and execute. Those are qualitatively different asks. And honestly, that is where many great firms shine. I think one of the biggest mistakes we make is assuming power has disappeared. Power didn't disappear, it just moved. Or maybe redistributed is a better word, because the really great firms adapt. They don't fight the client system. They understand it. They work inside it. They become trusted advisors inside the framework rather than insisting on owning the framework itself. And interestingly, I think those firms become even more valuable. Clients trust them more, not less, because expertise becomes concentrated where expertise actually matters. Complex issues, judgment calls, edge cases, advocacy, even creativity, those things don't disappear. What disappears is the idea that everything needs to be external. And I think that's really the misunderstanding. People see the first move moving upstream and interpret that law firms losing power. I don't think that's the case. I think they are losing authorship. I don't think they're losing influence. Those are different things. And maybe the bigger lesson goes beyond litigation, because I think we're seeing the same thing everywhere, in product, in AI, in procurement, in contracting. I can go on for a very, very long time. The organizations that own their first move increasingly shape everything that comes after. Direction creates leverage, not because you do all the work, because you define the game. And honestly, I don't think law firms are being replaced. I think they're being repositioned, which raises an interesting question. If influence is no longer coming from making the first move, where does influence come from? And are the firms that understand the distinction actually becoming more valuable rather than less? And in fact, perhaps they can actually command even higher fees because they're even more impactful.